I'm looking up ahead and I'm trying to spot where he walked. So I'm looking way ahead because we're getting open hardwoods now. So I'm literally pulling up my gun, trying to see where he went like 100 yards away. And I see through some thick stuff that he walked through that I knew I wanted to walk around. I see a track, and I'm like, okay, that's his track way up there. So I come around this opening, and I start walking up, and I take one step, and I look, and I'm like, there are tracks, like there's track over there. And I immediately stop, and I'm like, okay, I know I saw his track there. I look up on the bank, and I'm like, there's tracks over there. And then I start looking around. I'm like, wait a second, there's tracks everywhere here. Yeah. And I'm like, they're all fresh. So I'm like, okay. And I put up my gun on my shoulder. I'm like, okay, there's something going on right here. I take one more step, and all of a sudden I see a deer butt bedded.
Welcome back to another episode of Northwoods Whitetails Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Davis. I am sitting here today with Eric Adams, Corey Ryder, and Dustin Martin. Dustin just recently got home from one of our sistering states next door. Shot a really nice buck. Eric shot a really nice buck in Maine. He's over here hemming and hawing.
All right.
Who wants to lead the way? I want to hear some buck stories.
Dustin.
Sure.
Shoot, big guy.
Sure.
Shoot.
Yeah. No, it was a super awesome trip. We actually, a good close college friend of mine, Blaine Holcomb, and his dad, Dave, we had hunted before, and we hadn't planned any trips recently, and we wanted to make sure we got a hunting trip in, and he's actually building a camp over in the Adirondacks right now. It's not ready yet, but it will be ready next season. But we're like, well, let's rent a place and let's go over there and hunt last week of the Adirondacks. So that's what we did. And we went over on Tuesday, and which was, what day was that?
Last week.
Yeah, last week, 28th. And woke up super early, so there was fresh snow and everything. So my dad, Mike Skip, that we call him, we jumped in the truck and went, and we knew it was going to be pretty awesome conditions all week. So
did you stay at Blaine's new camp?
No,
not done yet.
It's not done yet.
You just rented something?
Yep. So we got a place, so we went over. My dad and I went and hunted all day on Tuesday. And those guys are going to meet us there that night. And so we had been hunting in this area for the past couple of years. And I actually left a camera back there on a big old signpost. And it's been there. Yeah, huge. I mean, hips with signpost. Mm-hmm. And so that my plan was to get back in there and just kind of hike around, try to catch a track. And I knew there were some good bucks hitting that camera, so I was like, well, all I need to do is just take this hiking trail. It's probably close to 3 miles back there from the road. No other way to get in there. So I was like, on my walk in, I'll see if I can catch a track and take it. And all day that day, I knew there was going to be snow squalls coming in. And that's exactly what happened from lake effect snow. And, I mean, it was coming down. And it actually snowed a total of probably like 6+ inches while we were out there. And really? So, I mean, yeah, we got soaked. So I knew any track that I would see, wouldn't look fresh at all. So I ended up doing this huge loop trying to catch a track. And nothing all the way past the camera. I hiked up on the ridge behind it, hiking all around, nothing. I'm like, well, I'm just going to start walking back to the truck or a different direction back towards the truck and do a big loop and see if I can catch something. I finally caught something, and it was just little dents in the snow. And ended up following that and it ended up leading me into some other deer, some does. So I actually was starting to see deer, and then I realized that nothing was really moving that day. And then towards the end of the day, the snow squalls kind of stopped, and I finally got on a buck track right towards the end of the day. And I followed that guy right till dark. And I got it was like right towards the end of light and I kind of was pushing it a little too quickly, and I had a feeling about that. Ended up jumping him right at the very end, and I knew I was moving a little too quick. But that was my first day, and perfect tracking conditions, but it was just like caught a track too late. Mm-hmm. Next day, Blaine and his dad were there. We went out into the similar area, did the same thing. I mean, hiking all around, and I was catching tracks, but they're going into areas where I couldn't hunt, and really didn't catch a good buck track that I wanted to until the very end. Again, the next day, I put on another. I think it was 14 miles the first day, and then 12 miles the second day.
Did you get snow that?
Yeah, I know. And out there, I mean, you have to hike in. There's no driving roads, so it's like you're hiking in, and I just couldn't find a track. And it was just like, holy smokes! I mean, legs are kind of getting shot, but you know, just gotta keep
ground.
Yeah, gotta cover ground, and gotta find the one that you want to take. So did
it snow that night more?
It's not a lot. But it did snow to refresh, like just a little dusting, so you could tell.
So did a lot of those deer just hunker down?
Yeah,
they just didn't move.
That was So they were moving, but they weren't moving far. Mm-hmm. They were in their areas, and they were definitely low. Everything was coming off the mountains. They were coming down, and so they're definitely headed to yards or staying in.
Just starting to stage up and get ready to go.
Exactly. But the end of the day, I had left 2 buck tracks headed in the same direction, good size buck tracks, and it was a huge chunk where they were headed where I could hunt. And I was like, okay, the next day I'm gonna head right into there, but come in from the other side. There was a road, 4 miles away. I said, you know what? I've never been in there, but I'm gonna park there, and if I have to hike all the way back to this spot, then I can. If it's 4 miles, and I can straight line it, try to catch a track. So that's what I did the next day, and I knew, man, if I could catch a track early, it is prime conditions, and I ended up doing exactly that. And the next day, when my dad dropped me off, and he was going to drive around, as soon as he dropped me off, I got into I've never been into this area. I'm like, I don't know what it's going to be like, but we'll give it a shot. And went, a quarter or 50 yards off the road and immediately hit tracks. I'm like, okay, great. There's deer in here.
Good spot.
Yeah. I'm like, there's deer in here. And so I looked at my Onyx and I saw there was a ridge. I'm like, okay, I'm going to hike up on top of that ridge, take that across. As soon as I got up on there, I saw a fresh buck track. Wasn't huge, but I was like, okay, there's a buck track. I'm going to follow him, see where he takes me, see if he brings me into somewhere. Got on it, and I probably went 50 yards, and all of a sudden I look down, and I see a slammer. And I was like, that's the track I'm taking. and I was like, it is early. It's, it's 7:30 right now, and I got a decently fresh buck track that is big. I have all day. I'm taking this guy. So jump on him, and we start going down through, and he's headed right towards this kind of swampy area, super thick or whatever. But I was like, you're gonna stay on him. If it doesn't work out one of these times, it's all right. I have all day. And we ended up getting down there into this thick stuff. I'm coming around corner, kind of looking in. I see other tracks or whatever, but his is the biggest, so it's easy to follow, and also it was fresh. Or fresher than the other ones. I ended up jumping him right off. Got into some thick stuff. He was bedded behind some evergreens and everything. Couldn't see him. But
so you didn't see him at all?
Nope, nothing.
Did he know what you were?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think he heard me. There was a little crunch in the snow, but it wasn't bad. But as soon as I got down there, I jumped the first time. I was like, okay, I'm not even going to wait 30. I'm going to wait 5 minutes. I'm going to get right on his track, but now I know he is fresh.
Right in front of you.
He's right in front of me, and it is probably 8 o'clock when I jumped. It was only like 30 minutes. And I was like, I am going to go slow on this thing. And so that's exactly what I did. I literally waited 5 minutes. I took a breather. I cleared my mind, and I was like, here we go. And I just started taking one step and looking, like I was crawling. And it was probably that buck probably ran a mile, then started stopping, looking back. He would start like big steps, looking back and nothing, but I still would go the same pace and just like stepping, looking.
Patient.
And he was, yeah, exactly. But I was like, I have all day on him.
Yeah.
It is perfect condition. So we start getting into other deer, and he starts wandering around, and then all of a sudden he gets on a doe track. I'm like, okay, good. I'm like, I hope there's a hot doe. I hope there's a smoking hot doe that he's like, I want that one, and sure enough, he's starting following him around, and then he stops running, and I think he forgot about me. And I saw that. I'm like, perfect. He's following this doe. He's following other deer. He starts walking around, checking other things. And I'm like, I'm going to stay on him. And we get through a mess or whatever. Luckily, I know his track is the freshest at this point, and he's still walking through a bunch of deer tracks. Get through all the thick stuff, and all of a sudden we start I get onto this other side of this swamp, and it opens up to open hardwoods. I'm like, nice. Like, this is exactly like we're into the area now where I feel like I got him out of that one area. And now I can be able to see him a little farther away than 10 yards. So get out there. He ended up leaving all of those deer, left the doe tracks, and he's just working his way along this swamp. And I mean, it's a beautiful day out, sunny, snow's starting to fall off the trees and stuff. And I'm like, man, this deer has got to be slowing down here soon. Like, we've gone quite a ways, and he's starting to like kind of wander out of all of the deer tracks. I'm like, I'm wondering if he's going to be bedding down up here or something. Come up over top of this knoll, and I happen to put down my gun, or lean my gun against the tree, and I grab my other gloves, and it's starting to warm up and everything. And I'm looking up ahead, and I'm trying to spot where he walked. So I'm looking way ahead because we're getting to open hardwoods now. So I'm literally pulling up my gun, trying to see where he went, like 100 yards away. And I see through some thick stuff that he walked through that I knew I wanted to walk around. I see a track, and I'm like, okay, that's his track way up there. So I come around this opening, and I start walking up, and I take one step, and I look, and I'm like, there are tracks, like there's track over there. And I immediately stop, and I'm like, okay, I know I saw his track there. I look up on the bank, and I'm like, there's tracks over there. And then I start looking around. I'm like, wait a second, there's tracks everywhere here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're all fresh. So I'm like, okay. And I put up my gun on my shoulder. I'm like, okay, there's something going on right here. I take one more step, and all of a sudden I see a deer butt bedded, like up on the bank. I'm like, there he is. I immediately pull up, safety off, click, and I pull up, but I can't see the head. And I'm like, okay, I'm looking, and I'm like, oh God, I'm trying to slowly trying to creep around. I'm like, don't see me. And I'm just trying to find bone. And so I take one step to look, and all of a sudden a deer takes off at the bottom of that bank, and I just see a rack. And I'm like, that's him. And I pull right up, and I was able to put it on him, and I fired 2 quick shots off. And right after the second one, he literally just tipped right over and fell.
You hit him both times?
Yeah. And so I immediately run up to him, and I see, like, I'm able to run up to him, able to put one last finishing shot. He's sliding down the bank, looking to put a finishing shot onto him. And I was like, holy smoke, what just happened? Like, I just couldn't. I was like, there's so much emotions in me because exactly, Eric, exactly what you're saying. Patient, like, how patient I had to be on that track. Like I'm usually a quick hunter. Like I'm usually fast moving through the woods, but I was like, I got this fresh buck track at 7:30. Like there's no reason why I need to rush on this thing. I have all day. He has
deep snow.
It's deep snow.
He wasn't gonna
so
go too
quiet.
far.
He wasn't going to go far. He had all the deer down here. It was like he was in his area. I'm like, there's no need to rush on this thing. So I was like, trust me, my patience, if you know me, it's hard for me to do that. I can tell you that right now.
Did you see what the other deer was?
And it was definitely a doe. I mean, like as soon as I pulled it up, if it was a buck, it would have been a small buck. Yep. I didn't see anything.
Not
you
noticeable.
know? Yeah.
It probably was a doe.
But that was my guess. It was a doe. But who knows? But all I know is I was trying to step around the tree and see what it was, and I see a rack coming up from the bottom. Like, that's the buck I'm shooting.
That's when they always run on me, and another half step just to get to that.
Oh my! I knew, but I was like, I can't see the head. I'm not just gonna shoot that. And then all of a sudden, the one jumps up. I'm like, oh wow! Like immediately, it was like pull up, and I just see. Like I'm like, yeah, don't even look at the rack, just shoot at the body.
How wide was he?
20 inches. Is 20. Yeah, what was he? I think it was like 19th and 7/8 on the inside spread.
Yep.
Or something.
Yep. He was an 8-pointer.
It was an 8-pointer.
What do you think he weighed?
180.
180.
Yeah. So big. I mean, so. We're gonna try to send the teeth in. Blaine took everything. They live in New York, and Blaine and his dad Dave. Shout out to them. Thank them for they took him. They butchered them all up. They caped him, and they ended up taking care of the rack and everything. And we're gonna try to go over and meet him to pick it all up at some point.
That's great.
Geez, I'll have to get their number.
Yeah, exactly. But they're going to try to send the teeth in or see if we can age it. But we're thinking that buck was 7.5, 8.5 years old. Okay. Big head on it, molder, teeth all worn down and everything. And we're actually wondering. It's like, man, is this rack actually coming back down? That was one of the questions. Like usually we don't like saying that, but it was like, man, wonder what this thing. It looks like an old deer.
Yep.
So
good hoof on it.
Really good hoof on it. Like noticeably different from all of the other deer
Sounds
around
like it
there.
Was one of those rare 200s over there.
Exactly. And that's what they said when they were like. Well, this deer was lean as lean could be. Like it definitely ran right out and they had one of their other close friends come in. He's really good at caping deer, and the first thing he said was like, "Wow, look at the chest on that deer."
Yeah,
it's just a big chested buck.
It looked long bodied too.
Yep,
good buck.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you got phenomenal video of it.
Yeah, I did.
I've seen a little bit of that.
I did.
Yeah.
That's gonna be. I keep on watching it too.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I keep on going back and watching that. I'm like, wow, how did I capture all of that? I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better day either.
That's definitely one of the better capture videos that I have seen out of everything that's been produced of anybody's. That thing is right there.
I mean, like it's clear as could day, and you could see literally everything I did. You could see perfectly.
Yep. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
How long were you on his track? How far?
I think total is around 4 miles. But I, that might have been from the truck too. But I know I went that might have been from the truck because I know I was on him for close to a mile after I jumped him, and then, or when he stopped running. Sorry. And then what it was after that, I don't know if I went back and looked, but I think it was a total of around that.
You picked him up around 8 in the morning?
7:30, yeah.
What time did you end up getting him?
It was 11:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had the afternoon to
Oh, yeah, I had plenty more time. Yeah. And that was the coolest part, too, is those guys were so psyched. They immediately left their hunt. They're like, where are you? We're coming to find you. And talk about the drag out. that was probably the hardest drag out I've ever had. But at the same time, I loved it.
Those guys over
I
there
loved it
like,
because
what is wrong with you Vermonters dragging deer.
Exactly. and so, but shout out to those guys. They literally left the woods, drove all the way back over to me. I ended up walking out, meeting them, leaving my gun and some stuff or whatever, and hiked back in with the sled. And then we ended up walking back out with them, but it was for all four of us being out there and celebrating it. Man, they were just as psyched as I was. So
that's awesome.
It was a really cool moment to be able to share.
Those are good hunting partners.
They sure were. They wanted to be there.
Yep.
That was.
How far were you from the road? Do you figure once you had
Yeah,
shot him?
Close to a mile.
Yep.
I think, I forget what it was, but close to a mile. Okay. But we were paralleling it. So,
really?
We got on the track and he was not right next to it, but we were paralleling the road and getting behind this big mountain and back behind this swamp. So he was just hanging out right in there. It looked like he came off the mountain and came down into this area where there's a bunch of deer just hanging out.
Do those deer travel a long ways, do you think,
yes.
to yard? Yeah, they do. Yep.
Especially those big mountains.
Yep. Huh. Well, Corey, what do you have to add?
No, it sounds like a good hunt. I'm looking forward to watching the video.
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
Yep.
Yeah, that's going to look, yeah.
That's pretty sweet. I saw the video. That's pretty cool. Eric, how was Maine?
Oh, yeah, not bad. A little weird. Weather was
just funky.
Yeah, and everybody I talked to,
Yeah.
Well, Dustin, you got yours first week, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had good snow. I had to take that day to go get a new heater for my camp, but it snowed, so not a lot moved that day up where I was. But
what's with the new truck? What is that truck?
What do you mean?
No, his truck's parked right past it.
Yeah.
Oh,
mine's there.
Yeah.
The red one?
Yeah.
Yeah, new truck.
Huh.
Oh, I thought.
No,
Yeah.
the red one?
No, that's
was
Corey's.
it that's Corey's
Yeah.
truck that I was seeing.
We have a bad experience with the Ford again?
No,
Oh.
I just switched it up.
Huh.
Can a guy change?
Well, yeah,
I know.
yeah.
Some people are like going, Ford to Chevy?
Yeah.
Chevy guys are, of course.
Wasn't it?
Ford guys are going,
Wasn't it last year you had a wicked debacle? Was it last
No,
year?
it was the year before.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the transmission getting blown up, or the cooler
Cooler, yeah.
Good place for that to happen.
going out. Yeah.
Fun times.
Yeah. We talked about it on that last podcast.
Well, glad to see you're in a GM product.
Yeah. Worked well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had to go get a new heater. What did we do after that?
So came back, saw some doe, 8 or so doe, all no bucks with them at all. Getting some bucks on camera, a couple good ones. I left the camera up all summer just as an experiment because usually you get all the leaves and branches and everything, but the camera's in a good spot. It's like a community scrape, and had bucks all summer, bucks and does. So I think the buck I shot is actually, I do have footage of him growing up, seeing his antlers form. So,
That's cool.
But, so it came down to, I guess, third week, day before Thanksgiving.
You had all sorts of weather conditions. You went from snow the first, day or first? Definitely
snow
the first
was
week.
the first week.
Yeah.
Up there, it kind of froze a little bit, so it got a little loud. But then I just, took my time. I've got all month, so I don't want to burn myself out. I ended up actually coming out early. I came home because I was like, well, doesn't look like any snow for a little bit or next week, Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you'd lost all your snow.
Lost the snow for the most part, just a light, dusting and crust. So instead of making the trip home on a Sunday real quick to get the muzzle loader, I headed out Thursday night. I drove home. So, Friday, Saturday back here at home and got my muzzle and headed back up Sunday. And checked all my cameras Monday, and only one had some deer on it. The other, I had 4 out. The other 3, not a deer, which is really unusual.
I remember you and I were communicating there, and you were basically saying, like, it ain't happening up here. There's nothing's moving. And
No.
Baker was saying the same thing.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's kind of an offshoot of a migration trail up above where I camp. And the first week when it snowed, boom, there's some doe on the migration trail. Mm-hmm. It's the same every year. It gets a little snow, but they go back and forth. It's like a travel way for them anyways, from kind of a couple of different cuts. But literally that first 3 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks, those were the only deer that crossed that trail on that road. So really unusual. Just like, but same thing with like what Baker was saying. I'd travel around, drive around, and I saw some of the biggest tracks I've ever seen. You know, some monsters that were a couple days old. You know, I kind of followed just to see what they were going, usually going into some pretty nasty stuff. But
gets pretty thick up there, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And so so there was definitely some mega ones around, which I hadn't really seen much before. You get one come through, maybe 2, but it seems like every spot where I get some stands or where I hunt a lot or check, and there was a monster that had come through. So, yeah. So then Thanksgiving we were expecting, or that week, that snow. So when was that? So it snowed Tuesday night and was snowing all night and snowing the next day. So I got up and said, okay, I'm going to start doing the road cruise, you know, in the dark. And see what? I met up with some other guys that, excuse me, that I know. They're Vermonters, and they drive a long ways over to hunt there. And they were just going to drive. And they were on the same road I was, so they said, you know, they turned around their usual spot, and I still had another half mile on the road where I go. And not long after I left them, and there's the snowed-in dimples in the road, but, I mean, a little more, you know, wasn't that much snow in it, but enough. But I was like, yeah, well, that was done obviously not too long ago. And he had pretty good stagger, you know. Couldn't really see the print, but you could see how wide his hoof was. And I said, that's a buck, you know, no problem. So got out of the truck, got ready. He headed down into an old cut, and it was a mix of like whips and alders, kind of, but not really whippy, more alders and swale grass. And I was on him maybe, 5 minutes, 200 yards from my truck. And there he was.
Just like
wow.
Shot him. Thanks for listening.
Wow.
No.
Yeah.
Wow. That easy, right?
Yeah.
It's always that
that's
easy.
it. So, no, actually, sneaking through, it's an old tote road. So I'm out in the open, kind of following his track, not even, preparing for, okay, an hour, 2 hours, he'll start to freshen up,
Right.
But like a lot of people have happened to them, hadn't happened to me really, they start backtracking or do whatever. I don't know if he was, after I'd shot, so I was in the cut coming down through the tote road. All of a sudden, there he was, 20 yards in front of me. So a lot of snow on the trees and everything else, but he was on the other side of a bank of alders, nice, inch thick alders. And I'm like, first thing I noticed was his body. I'm like, wow, deep chest, big. I thought he was bedded down and actually stood up like right in front of me. And then he turns his head, and I see horns. And I go, yep, thick, shooter. And then I'm realizing he's walking towards me, kind of quartering towards me. And I go, I'm going to get busted here because I'm out in the open. He's just got to kind of go around these alders a little bit, and I'm right there. So on either side of the tote road, like always, there's a clump of spruces and everything else. So I'm like, I got to weave one. I got to get one into him. So I actually didn't step. I leaned to my left and kind of tilted my gun too to try to get around the bank of alders a little bit and try to pick a spot, and concentrated on, and shot. And he came right across in front of me, right into the spruce trees. And I shot another round couldn't see him, but, so shot another one in there. And I could hear him crashing through. So I just stood there for a minute, just listening, couldn't hear anything more. So walked the 20 yards up to where he was, see that the tracks were a little bit fresher, but he had been no bed or anything. He had been meandering around, probably feeding there or something. Not much for feed, I don't think, but I don't know. I didn't take my time to really walk around to look. But there was hair there. No blood, just some hair. I'm like, okay. So...
Using your pump or your
Yep,
bolt?
using the pump. Yeah. So, filled the clip back up, took a little breather and said, okay. He was headed into the cut more.
How many times did you shoot?
Twice. First time on him, second time just to wail through the spruces.
That's not like you to shoot twice.
Well, I'm getting old. So, yeah, I went through, followed him through the stuff, headed out into more of the clear cut. And ironically, he's running right down literally the same kind of trail where I dragged my last buck out of Maine. Same trail, same spot. And he's headed down in, so I know the area. And followed him down through, it just, slight downhill, and then it gets down to a level plateau where the river is. And so I got down there. Pole spruce, you can see pretty good. Stopped. Finally, a little speck of blood. Just a little speck. Like, you got to be kidding me, Followed just another 50 yards. I just wanted to kind of see a little bit. Swinging a leg. Like I said in the last book, you can always hit a leg. Mm-hmm. And saw that he was swinging a leg, so I'm like, okay. Leaned the gun up, videoed a little bit. And chilled out. I was bummed, 200 yards from the truck, deer's 20 yards in front of me, and I didn't get one into him. So, a lot of stuff. I was happy that I got something, but now seeing that there wasn't much blood, I was kind of depressed about that. So, so then he headed down into the river.
How big of a river?
It ranges probably from, 20 feet wide. Stream, 20. A lot of times, especially it hadn't rained a lot, but...
Over the boot, too?
Areas could be, but definitely spots you could get through it okay. So he trailed alongside it for quite a while, right on an area I'd scouted out quite a bit, so I knew it pretty well. And I said, just don't cross the river to the other side because it's a miserable area. So he got down in the river, and then I noticed he didn't cross. So I said, oh, here we go, because that's what happened to me.
Did you cross the river
I
at that
crossed
point?
the river and looked.
And he didn't come out?
No tracks. And I said, he's doing it. And that happened to me, like, I don't know if we had talked about it, like 20 years ago. And I said, he's trying to lose me in the water. So I started wading down and it was in a shallower enough spot, so I started going down the river. And then the river would close down to a little 8-inch space, and he'd go through it. He wouldn't, it was like covered with slush.
He didn't want to get out of it.
Yeah, he was, it was all snow and slush covered and ice covered in areas, but it'd narrow right down on the left-hand side to 8 or 10 inches. And he'd walk through it. You might see a little leg mark and then go a little bit further, and then it would narrow up on the right-hand side.
How'd you figure out which direction he was going in the stream?
Because I did catch where I went down a little ways, and he had hit some slush. And I said,
gotcha.
Okay.
Yep.
So now I just paid attention to the sides and walked. But the areas, it would close in. So when it closed in all the way, he'd get out. So he'd cross, so he'd go up on a bank. And he bedded down, bled a little bit, not a lot. And I didn't jump him. So waited a little while there, and started on him again. And at this point, I'll admit something, which is a horrible thought. Because I didn't think he was that injured, and now I'm almost 2 miles from my truck. I'm doing the jerky thing. Maybe I should let him go. He's not hurt that bad. And that's the wrong thing. And I was really surprised that thought came across, but I'm being honest. And I'm like, you idiot, you don't do that. You don't
just no blood.
You don't wound a deer. There's hardly any blood.
Yep.
Hardly any blood.
And was he swinging that foot nonstop or just every now and again?
Swinging a leg. Nope. Swinging it. You're seeing it. So I'm like, don't be a jerk. That's not what's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm like, you shot him. You wounded him. It's your job to finish him off.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So sat there and just regrouped and like, yep, okay, let's go. Mm-hmm. Same thing in the river again. He did that. I probably followed him a half mile in the river.
Jeez.
In and out, same thing. Then it started to get worse. The bank, it started to get wider, started to go over my boots, and then the banks started to get a little steeper. Then he had a little trouble getting up out one time. You could see where he'd fallen. Then I could see a little more blood. Then he stopped one time, and it's dripping. I'm like, what? I'm like, is he that leg starting to rip, starting to do something?
Bone or something.
Causing, getting a vessel, a little blood stirring. And then I noticed he's shuffling. He's not like doing the normal trot. It's almost like he's just baby stepping it through. And I'm like, and then another deer comes in. And not a big track, so I think it was a doe. But the other track, it was almost like they were following one another because that one would go into the river and cross with it too, and come across.
I'm sure he was. I'm sure that he was obviously rutting.
Yeah.
And he was on a mission to
maybe still
do his thing.
Yeah.
Regardless of being wounded or not,
Yeah.
he was still chasing a doe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually fell on the ice in one spot and then just laid there.
You didn't get a video helping him?
I should have taken a video of that spot because it was, but no, I didn't help him like the moose.
Yeah.
So he chimed in.
Yeah, he did. He's quiet, but he's quick.
That witty banter came. Right?
Yeah, he's witty.
Yeah. So he got up out of the water for the last time, and boom, there goes a deer, bounds over a tree, blow down like, the majestic,
Yep.
And I'm like, that's not him.
Yep.
No way.
Yep.
Couldn't see the head, but kind of knew. Took a break, relaxed for a little while, did a little video, and like, okay, time to turn it up.
Mm-hmm.
And so now he's out of the river, headed through, real bad cedar swamp, kind of an old tote road. So it's just like a tunnel where the tote road was in the spruce. You could just bend down and see
fun to walk through.
moss covered, and I literally was almost crawling through. But he started to head toward a cut. I could see some light. And so I was like, okay, head there. Give me a little chance. Yep, and he headed there and went up on the hill and started to go through the open. You could see down through, again, a nice cut, not full of whips, swale grass, nice spruce pieces. So I'm literally not quite running, but I'm on a trot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going good because I can see like where the moose trail was, and it's all snow, and I could see, like you were saying, I could see his tracks. So I look ahead 100 yards. I'm like, okay, he's gone there. Boom. I boogie to that spot to where I could see around the corner again. And he's did that a few times. I'd get to a corner, look around, see, pan, start to boogie. Look at the tracks, really scan. Finally got toward the end of the cut, and he did a 90. And I stopped, and I could see ahead, 20, 30 yards in front of me. I could see that he did a 90. So I did the quick pan to my left where he went and scanned through, and there's just a little hole, some spruce trees. And there he was, bedded. And he didn't move. He turned right back, and he's looking right around his butt, looking right at me. So I got one into him there and had to go around and finish him off. So
Nice.
Found out, so because he was quartering toward me, it went through his front shoulder, maybe an inch deep on his front shoulder, because actually just before I'd seen some blood like 3 feet high on a spruce tree. And I'm like, what? Why is there blood 3 feet high on the spruce tree? And you're swinging a leg, it has everything, all the blood's been, nothing has been transferred up high. So come to find out, that's what, that shot going through. So either alders had deflected it or something, because I was right on his body. But maybe that shoulder, just how he was quartering me, just turned it enough, but it hit his front shoulder, went through the meat of his front shoulder, no bone, and then hit his back leg,
So you
up by
blew
his
that.
knee, and blew his leg there.
Oh, so it was his rear leg. He was
Rear leg. Yep.
Huh?
Yep. So.
Far side or near side? Must have been his.
No,
Of you.
He was coming toward me. So, yeah, it was the closest side. It was his right side.
Wow.
So I went into his front shoulder and
Wow.
then hit his back leg. So I don't know if it
Just
may
ricocheted enough.
Yeah.
may have grazed that front shoulder, because that's how he was quartering toward me, and I was going right in, and it, so I don't know if it. I have to ask
Yeah.
the butcher, see if there's anything on, if he noticed anything.
Huh?
I, felt around a little bit. I don't think it was deep enough to do that, because it would have really affected his front leg too, I think, a little bit. I mean, I think it
didn't
was
come
just
out-
because he was baby stepping.
It didn't come out his back leg.
Oh, well, it went through his, yeah.
It didn't come all the way out though, or it did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
It
it
just
did.
blew through his
Yeah?
knee.
Oh.
It was, nothing was holding.
Yeah.
Not much was holding that rear leg.
Huh?
But power to live, they want to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt, I just wanted to get it. And I was just like, so literally from 200 yards shooting him to 3 miles later, 3.5 hours, shot him.
Man.
And then
You caught up to him though.
I
and you were
purposely
able to-
did not look at my Onyx to find out, because I knew. And so I filmed him a little bit. I was happy, finally get him.
And what was he?
He would have been a 10. He broke off his brow tines, so he was an 8 and 2.
Broke off both of them.
Both of them. Mm-hmm. Yep. Still little nubs there, but 205.
Nice.
Yep. He cleaned out.
Mm-hmm.
How close to the road did he die?
See, and there's the story. You never know. That's, you think of giving up or doing, and just for that reason, I was 100 yards off another
No
road.
way.
Yep. 100 yards
Wow.
off a different road.
Yeah.
You're right.
Took me 3.5 miles to walk back
Right.
to my truck, and then drive the 10, 15 miles around to it. But literally, 100, couldn't believe it.
Wow.
100 yards from the road, had to chainsaw some trees because it was a pixie stick before I got to the road. But took my time
That's a pretty good story.
and had him out. Yeah, it took me half hour to drag him out.
Nice.
It ain't bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good story. I might mount him. It's a pretty deer,
I think you should. He's a pretty good buck.
He's fairly heavy. He's only 17 or so wide, but nice buck. But the story that goes with it,
Right.
a little sad, but it was a good hunt, and
Yeah.
good experience.
Sometimes
So-
it's just the way it goes.
Yeah. But yeah, if you ever think of giving up on one,
Yeah.
slap yourself
Yeah,
in the
right.
face and don't
Yeah.
finish it.
Yeah.
Finish the job you started.
You've got to, even if you nick him, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you got to
Totally.
make sure.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, make sure. You had a similar experience last year like that.
Yeah, we weren't going to talk about that though.
Last year?
Yeah.
Huh.
It wasn't quite like that. It's a whole story. We don't need to get into.
Oh, we're into it.
We weren't supposed to do this.
Don't look at me.
But before we get into that, I got two questions.
Yeah.
Do we have a picture
Yeah.
of that buck? And
Yep.
you said you had trail camera video of him? Video or
Yeah.
picture?
Video.
You do videos?
Yeah. I do videos. So I got him in
He's
the velvet.
old, but he's not that old.
Yeah, are you willing to share that with us?
Yeah.
For
I'm doing
like,
it.
so we can
Yeah.
put into this
Yeah.
podcast?
Yeah. Because
That'd
I
be
got him in velvet, I believe.
Yeah.
Him and an 8 squaring off and hanging, but
Cool.
I got him when he even started. And then actually, the night before season started, I went down on the Sunday. I got camp set up and I went down checked the camera, and he was on it that night going through the night before.
Cool.
Yeah,
Pretty sure it's him.
I think that would be awesome if we can.
Yep.
If you don't mind us using that for this.
Yeah, I'm sure the guys watching love to see it.
Yep.
Did you see the normals up there? Did you see the normal guys? You run into them?
As far as the hunters, yeah.
Yeah. Local guys.
The bus guys, yeah.
Yep.
Local guys had
Nice.
Thanksgiving in the bus again.
Nice. That's
Yep.
cool.
But really not that many hunters. You know, I came out, beautiful snow, and nobody had driven my road at all.
Yep.
And there's literally 30 miles of road to drive.
Yep.
Nobody had come down in.
Huh.
And it was perfect. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I'm not telling anybody where it is.
Yeah.
But the moose season's up there for the first 2 weeks of the season, so there's more people up there. So who knows? That may have an effect on a lot of the deer and what's going on too, as far as traveling, going across the road, some of the roads.
What are you seeing for moose up there? Are they just annihilating everything, or are you still seeing plenty?
I'm seeing plenty.
Yeah.
I'm seeing, every moose hunter I saw, we're like, I haven't seen a thing. I'm like, I just saw 8. You know, I'll show you the video of another close moose encounter.
Really?
The one, they were, 8 feet from me.
That's cool.
7 moose came by, walked right by me.
That's pretty cool.
8 feet. Didn't have to help those.
Yeah.
Nor was I.
No. Cows or bulls?
3 cows and 4 bulls
Right together.
all together.
That is awesome.
Yeah. The 3 cows came through, 2 young bulls. Another bull came. He was sneaking around behind me on the tree. And on the video, I turn around and boom, he takes off because he sees me turn around. I'm not out in the open. I'm staying by a huge hemlock, so I can scoot around in case they decide to do anything. And so that bull went back the other way, and then there was a 50-inch bull behind that one coming. I didn't get footage of him, of course, but they both turned there. So yeah,
Close to the yard?
Yeah.
Good. Maybe we find in those antlers.
It's a good spot. Yeah.
Don't tell Corey about it.
It's a good spot. Well, if I show him the video, he'll recognize the tree.
There's a good chance. There's a good chance.
I know that hemlock.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a hemlock.
Yeah. See, I narrowed it down.
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about your experience?
Well,
Or no?
it is similar in some ways to Eric's, and I agree with kind of his assessment of, you owe it to that deer. You hit the deer. Either confirm that this isn't fatal. The deer's fine, or I owe it to this deer to finish it and end its suffering, basically. But it was
There's much big suffering afterwards if you don't catch up to them.
Absolutely. And so last year, I was hunting. I think there was barely enough snow, not good tracking conditions. There was just maybe a little bit of snow, really crunchy, I think. And so I went in looking for a big track, and I ended up jumping a doe, and I sat right down on a log. There was a nice log. I sat right down there, and I was looking at onyx and stuff, and I think I did some grunting. I must have waited 20 minutes or so. I figured maybe it was a good spot where I jumped there, and I could smell her. I figured maybe there'd be a buck that would come along. It was probably one of the best scenarios I had going that day. I didn't think tracking was going to be very effective in those conditions. So I'm kind of looking at onyx and whatnot, and when I looked up, the direction the doe had run to, I kind of expected maybe a buck would be coming from where she had come from, but no, the direction that she had gone, I saw a buck coming the opposite direction, probably 100 yards out. You know how it is in the big woods and with logging practice. I get brushy. You can see 100 yards. That's pretty far, but it's not a clear, open, view. So I see him going through the brush, and I saw a rack, and it's hard to explain this, but I'm really hunting something giant, the buck of a lifetime, and I've really dedicated my seasons for the last 2 or 3 years to that, and I've been letting rack buck go. I know you know this. But a lot of the listeners maybe don't understand this. It would sound crazy, but letting rack bucks go, some even 200 pounds, and it's pursuing that buck of a lifetime. And so when I saw that deer, and right when I saw him moving broadside, and then he stopped when he had his head, obviously, I just got the one glimpse of his rack, and then he had his head behind a spruce bough. And I knew he was a big deer, and I thought, man, that could be the one that I'm after, so to speak. And I thought I should probably take the shot, because I got to back up a step. Before that, we had a good snow, I think the week before, and I had taken a track, and I had caught the buck in about 20 minutes, and I had him in my sights as he took off, and I didn't fire because I hadn't been on his track long enough to see how big it was. It was just running when I had been following him. He hadn't even slowed down yet to see his walking track, so it was just a running buck track is all I had seen of him. And then all of a sudden I caught him, and I just saw a little bit of his rack, and I should have shot him because it was the deer I was after.
Oh, man.
And then we lost the snow, and so I spent the rest of the time going for him. But anyway, then it came to this scenario where I jumped the doe and I see this buck. So I thought, that was the right area that it could be. And I thought, not again, I'm not going to have him in my sights and not shoot him again. So I pulled up, I felt real steady, and I took the shot. The deer, it looked like he just disappeared. So I thought I dropped him. And if he had run in any direction, I would have seen him. So I think he did hit the deck. And kind of reviewing the footage, I'm not sure what happened. Either something deflected the bullet right out the barrel, or something it deflected down towards him.
Yep.
Didn't hit him. I didn't know that, but in my mind, I thought of him, and I kind of
Didn't hit him at all.
Didn't hit him at all. But he must have dropped. Couldn't see him. Reloaded, held, waited. Nothing's happening. So I start to move down there, thinking I just smoked him. And he jumps up. And as soon as he jumps up, and he was probably, I probably only made it 25 yards, maybe, so he's still 75 yards out. As soon as he jumps up, I know it's not the right deer. And but thinking, I hit this deer.
Hit him once, you're right.
So and it was hard to line up that shot the way he was taking off through the, it was thick, and line up the gaps. It wasn't good. If I hadn't thought he had already been hit, I probably wouldn't have shot. So I had to let him fly, unloaded the rest of the rest. I think I put another fresh magazine in, so I had 5 more rounds I threw at him, I think. And lo and behold, I get down there. I think I winged him on the last shot. I mean, I barely winged him. There was mostly hair, like white hair. I'm like, well, now I gotta go punch my tag on this deer. Like it's a nice deer, and so I start going, and it was barely any blood, barely at all. Like I knew I just grazed him. It looked like inner thigh to me because it was mostly that white hair. And you have mostly hair, that's a graze, kind of gashed him. And if it's through and through, you'll get some hair, but a lot of hair tells you it's a graze, and some
Yep.
And so I'm following him, like, all right, yeah. He goes down, he crosses a river that, like, I wasn't swimming that day. It was probably up to my neck. And so I had to go back to the truck, drive all the way around. And, of course, there's a road on the other side of the river. I get all the way around. There's a vehicle parked there. Like, well, that's a coincidence. Not really. That deer must have run across in front of them because they were on the track.
Oh.
And, you could see a little, maybe every 50 yards, a little speck of blood. And so I said, all right, they're on him. What do you do now? This is kind of weird. And so I went around them, and I got onto this other road, the trajectory the deer was going. And we're talking, I've probably gone from where I winged him 5 miles now.
Wow.
Ooh.
Getting towards the end of the day. Like, I was just like, whatever, I got to spend the rest of the day on this deer. Like, I was very confident from the beginning that this is not a fatal shot, but I was going to give it everything regardless. So, sure, I pick up his track on that other road, and he went down. He had bedded, so I could see, I grazed his inner thigh in that bed. Like, you could see that from where the blood was. And I'm not talking, like, there wasn't a lot.
Yep.
And he had walked out of that bed, so I hadn't jumped him or anything. So I start following him, and there ended up being a ton of other deer in there. And there was a big track, way bigger than his. And this deer was probably, my estimate, 180-pound deer. Nice, deer.
Yep.
8-point rack. And so the only way that I could stay on him, and it was right at the end of the day there, but the only way I could stay on him when he got into those other deer is if I looked down and looked for that
find a
little
little
speck of blood. So I'm
Yep.
basically taking a step, looking down. I didn't even realize I walked right up to like 20 yards from that buck. He was standing there, I think, feeding. And all of a sudden I look up and he's looking at me. Jeez. And
I can picture Corey right now, hands and knees on the ground,
Yeah.
smelling trash.
yeah. So, like, as soon as he took off, I pulled up and I was on him, and I knew I could just the whole scenario. I was like, okay, this deer is fine. He's going to survive, and I followed him, till dark. He wasn't even bleeding anymore at that point. When he took off and he ran, he didn't bleed anymore. And he was an 8-pointer. I got a nice video of him. You could clearly see him when he was that close.
Yep.
Moral of the story: you got to follow up. You gotta
Yes.
do everything
If
possible.
if it had been a different scenario and he had been wounded like Eric's, like I would have been able to finish him right there.
Yep.
He wouldn't have gone that far if he was
Yeah.
had a busted leg like that. But
Yeah. No, they can withstand a lot.
and I had closure.
You're right.
And I had the peace of mind, because I knew that I didn't fatally wound this deer. It sucks. I mean, I
Yeah, you
wish
hate
I
doing it
hadn't winged
regardless.
him like
yes,
that.
of course.
It wasn't my intent. Obviously, it never is any of our intent to.
Yeah.
We all want a one shot, one kill. We know how it goes. In reality and in imperfect environment and everything. But, I felt like I did the right thing. So
Did you
That's
do due
good.
diligence?
Yep, that's good. So, moral of the story: due diligence. I can't even speak, but do what you need to do to follow that deer. Everything possible to know that he's.
yeah, and 2020, that video, running and gunning, like that's what I mean by running and gunning. That was pretty controversial amongst the whitetail hunting community. I think you guys know the video I'm referring to. But I hit a buck very similar to what Eric did, where it busted that leg and, run it down and finish it off.
Do
And
what
that's
you need to do.
Oh, the animal.
Yep.
It's not fun. It's not a fun scenario.
No, it's not.
Not in the least bit. I think
Force the alternative.
we've all been there. We've all been there. I remember a time when I killed a buck, I hit him in the back leg, and when I stood him up out of his bed, I broke both of his front legs, and I still had to shoot him again. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that you envision that you can never get out of your head, right? It's something that is never meant for video, but it was. I shot that deer again just as fast as I could.
Yeah.
I hated it.
It's good to experience those emotions. It's how you know you're human, and remorse. You should feel remorseful. It's there's I've not to prolong this, but I've encountered some people that have said that they enjoy killing animals. Like the part of hunting that they enjoy is the killing, and I think that is disturbing. That is unbelievably disturbing.
100%. Nobody likes to do it. Nope. Well, we better wrap this baby up. At some point, be on the lookout. Dustin's Maine hunt is going to drop here sometime soon. We'll be sure to let everybody know. That's a very good hunt. That was your 220.
Yeah.
220.
Yeah. Pretty safe for this to come out.
Big puppy.
Yep. All right. Thanks, guys. And we'll see you on the next one.